Yo, what is up? Welcome to Ninja Geek Games. The king is dead, and as sibling rivalry festers, clans feud over an unclaimed crown where the kingdom is in conflict, filled with the sinister whispers of the nature of the previous ruler's passing. In the Old King's Crown, you take on the role of an heir to the throne at the head of a powerful faction. Here you need support from your followers and agents to seize powerful locations and positions at court, not only to gain influence, but to claim the crown as rightfully yours. But loyalty comes at a cost. The Old King's Crown hits Kickstarter on October the 24th. It's a game of subterfuge requiring hand management mixed in with some area control, skirmishes and a little engine building. During the game, players are required to play cards to various locations, clash with opponents for control of these regions, and summon support to bolster strength in some areas and feint in others. This is all tied in with vying for positions at court, taking on quests and travelling the Great Road to seek advantage through allies, artifacts and secret knowledge. In this video, we'll look at the components, setup and game mechanics, and also discuss the finer points of strategy and deceit. Note that this is just a prototype of the game, so any content you see here may change from the final product. Let's take a look at what you get. Each player takes control of one of the Old King's heirs and their faction, either the clans, nobility, uprising or the gathering. Each of the player boards has areas for 4 double-sided tactic tiles and placement of their herald and companies represented by these cool looking wooden meeples. There's a slot to place your hand-size marker tokens, as this may vary during the game, and an area for claimed kingdom cards and your faction-specific ability. You have a few faction tokens used to keep track of played cards, and another that slots into the track tile that shows the order of play throughout the round. Lastly, each faction comes with a deck of tarot-sized cards representing your followers, and over the course of the game you'll play these to locations and the Great Road during a round. Each faction deck varies in card count, as some cards start out of play that have to be earned, and I'll discuss this later, as this is one of the first areas that we see for asymmetric faction play. Each player also gets a reference card outlining phases in a round, but more specifically they detail the playstyle of your faction and their favoured keywords and strategy, which is great for new players. This is the map board that is split into 3 regions, the Highlands, Plateau and Lowlands. Each region is made up of 2 locations that have a unique reward and ability that are claimed by winning a clash. This is the collaborator disc that can be stolen by a faction and grants them use of their faction-specific ability, and the game comes with 3 resolution markers that dictate the order that clashes are resolved. The Great Road holds the kingdom cards and it forms a market-like area, and each faction has their own site of power tile. These can hold cards that can be spent for a particular action, and there is also a court tile that awards the holding faction influence every round. Finally, we get influence tokens at 2 values, which is what players will be looking to gain. Now, I've had a lot of prototypes handed to me for Kickstarter previews, but the Old King's Crown certainly has great production quality, so I have high hopes for the finished product. The tiles and player boards have a few slot-like areas you can store tokens and cards, which looks great when the game is set up, and the wooden player pieces are quite large and well designed that sit nicely on the boards. The game art from Pablo Clark is outstanding on the board map, Great Road and the cards. The map shows a wonderful landscape of ancient ruins, waterfalls and a great city. The cards have an eerie and somewhat sinister appeal to them, which is entirely captivating, that ties in nicely with the theme, and as we'll see later, looks fantastic when laid out on the table adjacent to the board. I'm hoping there'll be a deluxe version of the game, and if there is, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what's included. So, gameplay. I'm going to do this in 2 parts. Firstly, I'll show you the various phases in basic format so you get an understanding of how a round plays out, and then throw in the intricacies and demonstrate where your strategy lies. The Old King's Crown is played out in rounds that each have 4 seasonal phases flanked by upkeep phases. Depending on player count, the winner is the first faction to claim a specific number of influence tokens. During a round, you'll first need to place your herald meeple on a location, then play cards to all regions on the main board and optionally to the Great Road. The next step is to reveal cards and resolve clashes where location rewards can be claimed, and then attempt a light bidding phase to claim kingdom cards at the Great Road. Let's take a look. Spring signals the start of a round where players take turns placing their herald on a single location. Each faction only has 1 herald, and they can be placed anywhere on the map, even at locations with opponents' heralds, and during clashes these may provide influence. During the summer phase, all players will place 1 faction card from hand face down adjacent to each region on the map. This is all done at the same time, and it's these cards that will be used during clashes. Additionally, players can opt to place a faction card next to the Great Road that allows them to claim kingdom cards later in the round. Factions can also place company meeples from their player board onto any regions they choose in an attempt to bolster up your faction's card strength when revealed during a clash. As we'll see later, there's a limited supply of these companies, and once used you need to spend cards to get them back, which can be costly. During the autumn, players will reveal cards at each region and resolve the clash based on card strength. The clashes are resolved one region at a time, where the player at the bottom of the order track determines the sequence by placing resolution tokens. In its most basic form, a clash is won by the faction with the highest strength. This comes from the card value and the presence of companies. However, as we'll see later, you can also get to use tactic tiles from your player board, kingdom cards you've claimed, as well as being able to use any keywords on the faction cards that you've revealed. This is why the last player's choice of clash resolution can be quite important. Only one faction can win a clash, and they get to choose one of the region's locations and gain the reward. If the winner's herald is at the chosen location, it provides influence in addition to any provided by the location reward, as well as being able to steal more from an opponent if their herald is also present. This phase ends when clashes have been resolved at all three regions on the map, meaning there could be a perpetual transfer of influence between factions. During the winter, any faction who played a card at the Great Road can claim kingdom cards, and this has a light bidding mechanic. When cards are revealed, the faction with the highest strength gets first choice, followed by the others in strength order. Again, strength can be claimed from other sources such as tactic tiles to give you that edge. The light bidding comes in the form of optionally spending a faction card to participate, noting that your deck and hand size become an important factor in the game. Again, I'll discuss the options available at this stage a bit later in the video. There we have an outline of the game phases, how clashes are carried out and kingdom cards are claimed, and yes, it may seem simple. Essentially, you're doing no more than placing cards and meeples and comparing their strength with other factions at various stages to gain influence. There are no set number of rounds, as the game continues until one faction has reached the predetermined value of influence points to win the game. However, what if I told you that within these phases there lies a sophisticated web of complex intricacies, forward planning, risk management, and a possible and gradual loss of strength? Well, you'd probably believe me, because it would be a pointless sentence in a preview video detailing those mechanics. Within each phase of the game, every action you take must be considered carefully, such as deciding which particular card to play, how and when tactic tiles are activated, and planning opportunities to gain power in court, just to name a few. As well as the actions I've already discussed, many tiles, abilities and cards allow free actions to be taken during and outside your turn. These actions allow you to draw cards, gain influence, or make use of court and site of power tiles. Also, your hand of cards can represent how powerful and shrewd you are as a potential heir to the throne, as the larger your hand, the more options you have. But there will come a time when players will suffer attrition, and the timing will be different depending on how cavalier you are with your spending. Attrition is a loss of strength represented by your hand size. As the game continues, you'll be playing cards to regions, tiles and discard areas, and eventually your draw deck will be empty. When this happens, you shuffle your discard pile into a new deck and switch out the hand size token on your player board to one of lower value. This now indicates your new hand size that can drop again if you suffer attrition, although some game effects can increase this value. Also, at the end of a round, any companies you use to buff up strength in a region clash go back to your play area and not your player board. Therefore, if you use them carelessly, you won't be able to have these allies for support in later rounds. But you can remove cards from the game to get companions back to your player board, where this will result in a reduced overall deck size, leading to faster cycles of attrition. So, as you can see, hand management is a very important part of the game, and as we take a closer look at game actions, you'll start to see where they can eat up your deck. Now, even some rewards give you a choice of what and how to claim it. When placing faction cards and bidding at the Great Road, all players get involved to take kingdom cards that will offer powerful abilities, but there are different ways to execute this. You can take the card for yourself, switch out faction cards used to pay for kingdom cards you already have, or better yet, steal one from a rival. When taking a kingdom card, they sit on your player board, where the faction card used in bidding will sit behind and occupy this position. At times you can swap out the supporter for another if they have a high strength value or sought after keyword, for example, although a low strength occupied card is ripe for having their kingdom card stolen by another player. Your faction cards can also occupy seats at court or go on strange quests represented by placing them on separate tiles. Claiming the court tile is normally achieved through a location reward that requires cards with a specific keyword, and owning this seat gains that faction influence. Each faction has access to a site of power tile, and again cards with certain keywords can be placed here through various card actions or rewards. The difference here is that this area can hold multiple cards and provides the owning faction with a quest value, and I'll talk about how this can be spent shortly. Is that all? No. Each faction has access to 4 unique tactic tiles that sit within the player board. These provide quite powerful abilities that, if used at the right time, can completely change the outcome of a round. The only drawback is cost. This alone provides a great deal of asymmetry between factions, where you do need to remind yourself regularly of what different actions or costs are available on both sides of the tile. To use a tactic tile, it's simple. Carry out the action at the required time and flip it over. The difficulty is deciding the right time and how to flip it back. Once a tile has been activated, you flip it to the reverse side. This reverse side of the tile will be one of 2 types, where you need to pay a quest value from cards on the site of power tile to reactivate it, although some give you another option that is just as detrimental to your cause. The other type of tactic tile action is a one-time effect where the tile is removed from the game, so use wisely. Also, any cards spent from your faction site of power tile to reactivate the tactic are removed from the game as well. The asymmetry between faction goes a little deeper, where players can claim a collaborator token during a clash. The owner of the token gets limited uses of a faction specific ability and must therefore look to defend its claim during the next round's clash, as this token can be stolen by other players. Holding position in court and owning the collaborator tile can speed up the path to victory by gaining you influence and the use of a really nice ability, but only one faction at a time can own these. Therefore, if you own one or both, you'll really want to keep them. This requires defending the location that provides them as a reward, and this can be done in numerous ways. You can play cards of high strength to that region, but over time they'll be spent or put into discard. Companions can buff your strength during a clash, but you have limited supply, plus you need to remove cards from play to get them back, so risk of attrition over reward. Your tactic tiles and kingdom cards provide you with abilities, and some faction cards have keywords such as bolster, and these lend strength to other regions in a clash. Other keywords include bringing in extra cards from hand or prepping for future rounds by playing them at regions a number of rounds in advance. There is a host of keywords that affect the result of a clash, eliminating cards from play or protecting them, as well as being able to return those cards to hand rather than the discard, but only if loyal to your cause. Lastly, your herald can steal and gain influence, but can also be used alongside companies as a feint where you intend to place your strength at a region. Although each faction has the same agenda, to gain influence, they all have a different route to glory. For instance, the Gathering faction starts with cards locked beneath their player board, where tactic tiles provide ways to add these to their deck. All factions have a powerful card locked beneath their site of power tile that can be claimed by spending the card stored there, and that's if you decide to take the card rather than reactivate the tactic tiles. From the games that I've played, you have so many options within each phase and can sometimes chain link some nice actions over the course of a round. The faction with the least influence gets to choose the order of clashes at regions, which can scupper a rival's plans. A good example here is if a rival has secretly placed a bolster faction card in the plateau, meaning it can lend strength to the highlands and the lowlands. Anticipating this, because you can look through discard piles, the low influence faction chooses to reveal the plateau's region class last, meaning the rival can't make use of this bolster, and that's a touching moment. The Old King's Crown provides simple round actions convoluted with scheming, secrecy, second guessing and forward planning. Sometimes a well thought out play of rounds finally comes to fruition with a perfectly timed tactic tile. Other times you'll find your seat at court has been usurped, or the collaborator token has been stolen at a pivotal moment in the game, leaving you raging on the inside and readjusting your next action. Either way, you'll find a deep game with a great theme and components. So far, the rulebook is very good and simple to follow, making the game easy to learn, and I do like the attrition mechanic, meaning you need to be reserved with spending your cards until the time comes to go all in. The campaign goes live on the 24th of October and already looks to be promising with quite a big following at these early stages. I didn't have access to the solo mode, but understand this is being covered by Not Board Gaming, so recommend you take a look at their video. However, I did prefer this at 4 players due to the interaction in table talk, but you'll need to spend time with new players detailing how each faction works. Those looking for a highly competitive game that will no doubt provide a great deal of replay value and requires a bit of slow burning for some actions as well as immediate rewards in others will certainly enjoy the Old King's Crown. Thanks for watching. This is Ninja Geek Games. Cheers.